Rights are a seed sown in the land of silence. The seed is named possibility, is caressed by the wind, yearns for the light, and when it eventually sprouts, it takes the form of freedom that requires no one's forgiveness. Freedom walks barefoot, stepping on reality like a shard of glass, and there responsibility appears. It is not a shadow of rights. It is only by tracing the hand that embraces it that the right knows its own form. It does not reject ambiguity with precision. It is a structure of love that measures uncertainty and embraces madness that dares to draw a line in the unspoken margin. Every time we claim a right, we are held up to a mirror in the name of responsibility. What we see there is not the face of freedom, but the gaze of the other and the textile of the relationship. It is simply to lean in, watering, sometimes pruning, sometimes forgiving, sometimes forgetting, and eventually recalling. The ambiguous twill of justice is designed between I and you, not as a boundary, but as a resonant vibration. Rights do not bloom only in me. Responsibility does not bloom only for you. They echo each other, like a forest that matures together, quietly, exquisitely, and inescapably, nurturing the season of the age. The flapping of the wings of the butterfly called right, and the silence of the huge rock called responsibility measure each other, reflect each other, and make each other exist, just as the dawn and the dusk are placed on the two plates of a balance. It is in the gap between the two that the thread of dangerous equilibrium is stretched. The grace that pours down like a revelation declares the inviolable sanctuary created by expansion. The budding young leaves, in search of sunlight, naturally emerge as an affirmation of life. The wind whispers that if its wings spread without limit, it will become a storm that invades the skies of others. The paradox is that the purity of rights retains its luster only when imprisoned in a tower of solitude. The resistance of the wind that imposes itself on the wings of that right. The obligation to respond to one's own shadow is an indelible signature that one inscribes with one's own brushstrokes on the white world of freedom of choice, a contract for the future. Its weight is like an old tree with deep roots in the earth, an anchor that stabilizes its existence. But when those roots become excessively entangled, the earth moans that they can constrict the trunk of the tree and become a block to its growth. The sublimity of responsibility sometimes makes the tragedy of self-sacrifice a harsh and noble ordeal. Similar to that forbidden technique, the meticulous and daring work of the soul removes the dust of concepts one by one with tweezers called words, and polishes the brilliance of their essence with an abrasive called thought. The torrent of emotion is carefully guided by the embankment of reason in pursuit of an exquisite blend that does not allow for a single drop of excess or deficiency. Aware of the graceful space where the rights of others are not infringed, we are aware of the nourishing rain that allows our responsibilities to blossom into the freedom of others. The assertion of rights can only sound the tone of legitimacy when it is backed by the resolve of responsibility, and the fulfillment of responsibility can only produce the value of devotion when it is grounded in the awareness of rights. It does not imply static completion, but a dynamic process of generation itself. The thrilling Wriggle, which is like walking on a tightrope, shows its true power only when it is contained within the sheath of reason, which is responsibility. We stand daily as keepers of this delicate garden, with pruning shears of love and intelligence in our hands, so that the rose called right does not grow excessive thorns, and the thorn called responsibility does not grow thorns that hurt others. At the end of such precise labor, a utopia named perfect harmony continues to exist, pulsating as if it were breathing. The conceptual ground for affirming one's existence defines one's will and demands the establishment of one's subjectivity. However, when the pure will is released, the gravity of responsibility inevitably comes into play. Responsibility is an invisible structure that weaves the aftermath of action. It is a device that accompanies choice and locates the self in the chain of existence. Moreover, the lack of rights transforms responsibility into mere subordination. The equilibrium between these two terms is forged in a precise institutional design. Actions are the outgrowth of rights, and responsibility is the interweaving mechanism of their consequences. Blindly demanding rights produces an inorganic proliferation of obligations. In contrast, overemphasizing responsibility leads to the curtailment of autonomous choice.